All right, so we're diving into dreams this time. You guys sent in a ton of articles and research summaries all about dreaming. And it seems like the big question we're tackling is why? Why do we dream? Some of the stuff you sent focuses on what's happening in our brains while we sleep. Yeah, the science of it all. And then there's all this other stuff about the psychology, you know, like the emotional side of dreaming.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild to think about how much we still don't know. Like, even with all the science and technology we have today, the whole thing about why we dream is still a bit of a
It
mystery.
is kind of cool that there are still mysteries to solve, right? But before we go too crazy with all the different theories, maybe we should start with the basics. I mean, everyone's heard of REM sleep, but even I'll admit I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
REM sleep. Yeah, that stands for rapid eye movement. And it's basically the sleep stage where you get those super vivid, crazy dreams. And during REM sleep, your brain is actually super active, almost like you're awake. But at the same time, all your muscles are basically paralyzed, which is probably a good thing, so you don't act out those crazy dreams.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I've totally had those weird moments where I wake up from a dream and feel like I can't move for a second. It's kind of freaky, but now that you mentioned it, it's probably just my muscles catching up with my brain.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a normal part of REM sleep. They call it muscle atonia. And speaking of REM sleep, one of the articles you sent from National Geographic had some pretty interesting research about how dreams might actually help us deal with emotions, like especially difficult ones.
Hold on. So you're saying it's not just some random movie playing in our heads. Our brains are actually doing something useful with those dreams.
It seems that way. So
Yeah.
this study they talked about in the National Geographic article, they showed people all these disturbing images right before they went to sleep. And the people who had a good night of dreaming, they didn't react as strongly to those images the next day. So it's like the REM sleep and the
Yeah.
dreams. There's kind of like a buffer for your emotions.
Hmm.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. It's like our brains are working overtime while we sleep, trying to help us deal with all the tough stuff. I'm starting to think those vivid dreams I have after a super stressful day are actually my brain trying to make sense of everything.
Could be. And when you look at what's happening in your brain during REM sleep, it kind of backs that up. There's a lot of activity in the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that deals with emotions, and also in the prefrontal cortex, which is all about thinking rationally and making decisions. So it's like those two parts of your brain are working together, maybe to process emotions in a way that's safer and less intense.
So it's like our brains are sorting through all our emotional baggage while we sleep.
Oh.
That's both cool and a little creepy.
Mm.
But what about the actual content of those dreams? Like all that stuff about interpreting dream symbols. Is there any truth to that?
Dream interpretation. It's a tough one. There's no real scientific agreement on what specific symbols mean, but it's pretty clear that the stuff that shows up in your dreams, it can reflect what's going on in your life, you know?
Mm.
Your fears, your desires, the things you're trying to deal with.
So are we talking like deep Freudian symbolism here? Or is it more like what that Psychology Today article was saying, just a jumbled replay of all the stuff we experienced during the day?
Probably a bit of both, honestly. Some experts think dreams have all these hidden psychological meanings, and then others think they're more like random thoughts and memories all mixed up.
I guess the truth is probably somewhere in between. But even if we don't take every dream symbol literally, paying attention to themes or patterns in our dreams could still be helpful.
Right. Definitely. Like, for example, one of the most common dream themes is being chased. Now, depending on who you ask, that could mean a bunch of different things. But it could reflect a feeling of being overwhelmed or threatened in your waking life. Of course, that's just one example. And it's important to remember that dream interpretation is super personal.
I'm already starting to look at my own dreams differently now. But before we go full-on dream decoders, maybe we should shift gears a bit and talk about the bigger picture. The importance of sleep itself. A lot of the articles you sent really emphasized how important it is to get enough sleep.
Yeah, and it's something people don't talk about enough. Seriously, sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's crucial for your physical and mental health. All those articles you shared, they mention everything from hormones and cell repair to memory and emotional balance,
Yeah.
and all that happens while you sleep.
That makes me think, if all this important stuff is happening during sleep, and we know dreams happen during sleep too, doesn't that mean dreams have to be playing some kind of important role, even if we don't totally understand it yet?
That's a great point. It brings us right back to the big mystery. If dreams are helping us with our emotions and memories and all that, what does it mean for people who can barely remember their dreams?
Now that is a question I'd love to get your take on,
Hmm.
but I think we're going to have to save that for the next part of our deep dive.
It's funny how we tend to just brush off dreams. Like, there are these random things that don't really matter. But after talking about it, it seems like they might be way more important than we give them credit for. And that question you brought up about people who hardly ever remember their dreams, that's a really good one.
Yeah, it's got me wondering, does that mean they're missing out on something? Or maybe their brains are just handling things differently?
Well, one possibility is that everyone dreams. It's just that not everyone remembers them very well. You know, the whole remembering dreams thing, it probably depends on a lot of different things, like how well you sleep, your brain chemistry, even how you wake up in the morning.
So someone who gets jolted awake by a super loud alarm clock, they're probably less likely to remember their dreams than someone who wakes up naturally and kind of hangs out in that sleepy state for a bit.
Exactly. It's almost like when you have a thought and you try to grab onto it, but you squeeze too tight and it slips away, you know?
Uh,
If you're more gentle with it, you might be able to hold on to those memories. But even if you don't consciously remember your dreams, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not doing their job.
that's good to know. I can't tell you how many times I've woken up and been like, I know I was dreaming, but I can't remember anything about it.
Oh, yeah, that happens to pretty much everyone. But it does make you think. If dreams are supposed to help us process our emotions and memories and all that, is there a difference between people who remember their dreams and those who don't? It's something we need more research on to really know for sure.
So we've got two mysteries here then. Figuring out what dreams are for in the first place, and then figuring out why some people remember them better than others.
Exactly. And there are actually some studies out there that suggest people who remember their dreams regularly. They have more activity in certain parts of their brains during REM sleep. But is that why they remember their dreams? Or is it the other way around? We're still not sure.
It's a wild concept. Maybe remembering your dreams is like having a secret window into your subconscious. You get to see this whole world that other people don't even know exists.
I like that idea. Even if it's not a superpower or anything, paying attention to your dreams, even the ones you barely remember, it can give you some really interesting insights into what's going on inside your head.
You've definitely got me thinking about my dreams in a whole new way. But before we turn into dream interpreters, maybe we should go back to something you mentioned earlier about the connection between sleep and just feeling good overall. You were saying it's more than just being rested right.
Absolutely. One of the journal articles you sent about sleep medicine, it went into a ton of detail about how crucial sleep is for your health, both physically and mentally. It affects everything.
Right.
Hormones, your immune system, how well you think, how you handle your emotions. It's all connected to sleep.
It's mind-blowing when you think about all the stuff going on inside us while we're asleep. And yet so many of us are running around sleep-deprived.
It's true. Unfortunately, our modern world is all about doing more and sleeping less, and that can have some serious consequences.
Like what kind of consequences? What happens when you don't get enough sleep?
Well, apart from feeling tired and grumpy all the time, not getting enough sleep can make you more likely to have some pretty serious health problems like heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and it messes with your brain too. Makes it harder to focus, learn, make decisions. And on the emotional side, lack of sleep can make you way more stressed, anxious, even depressed.
That's a pretty scary list.
Yeah,
It really makes you realize that getting enough sleep isn't just about feeling good, it's about taking care of yourself in the long run.
exactly. Think of it as an investment in yourself that'll pay off in every part of your life. And like we were talking about, dreams might be a big part of that whole restorative process.
You know, this deep dive has totally changed how I think about sleep and dreams,
Yeah.
but it's also made me realize how much more there is to learn about all this.
That's the thing about sleep and dreams. It's incredibly complex and we're still figuring it all out, but that's what makes it so interesting.
It makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in those nightly journeys our minds take. Like one of the sources you mentioned is a study about lucid dreaming, which is where people become aware that they're dreaming while it's actually happening.
Oh yeah, that one's like something out of a sci-fi movie. But research is showing that lucid dreaming is a real thing, and some people can actually learn to control their dreams.
Wait, are you serious? You're telling me you can be conscious inside your own dream, like know you're dreaming while you're dreaming?
Exactly. And even though it's not as simple as just thinking about something and having it appear in your dream, with some practice, people can start to control what happens. It's like they become the director of their own subconscious movie.
Okay, now that is something I need to hear more about. But I think we'll have to save that for the final part of our deep dive.
Definitely. We've got a lot more to uncover.
All right, so let's talk about this lucid dreaming thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of a movie. Like if you know you're dreaming, can you really control what happens?
Well, that's the really fascinating part. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and change the whole dream. But research shows that if you practice, you can actually gain some control over your dreams. It's kind of like you become the director of your own mind movie.
So instead of just watching whatever crazy stuff my brain comes up with, I could actually like take charge and steer things in a different direction. That's wild.
Exactly. Imagine facing your fears in a totally safe space, or coming up with creative ideas, or even just flying over a city because it opens up so many
I
possibilities.
could already picture myself flying. But how does this even work? Is lucid dreaming like a special skill that only some people have?
It probably varies from person to person. Some people just seem to be able to do it naturally, and then others might need to try some specific techniques to make it happen.
What kind of techniques?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
One common one is called reality testing. Basically, it's about getting into the habit of questioning your surroundings throughout the day. Like, look at a clock, then look away and look back again. In a dream, the time might have changed. Doing those little checks can actually train your brain to do the same thing while you're sleeping. And sometimes that can trigger that awareness of dreaming.
So you're training your brain to spot those little glitches that happen in dreams.
Exactly. There are other things you can try too, like keeping a dream journal, writing down what you remember as soon as you wake up, or setting an intention before you go to sleep, like telling yourself you want to have a lucid dream. And there are even some devices that track your sleep and give you little cues to help trigger lucidity.
This is blowing my mind. It's like a whole new world opens up when you realize you can actually be a part of your dreams.
Yeah.
But what's the point? Is there any real benefit to lucid dreaming?
Yeah.
Like, besides just having fun in your dreams, is it more than just a mental exercise?
It's a great question. And we're still learning about all the potential benefits of lucid dreaming. But some research suggests that it could help with things like nightmares. It could help you get better at problem solving. And some people even use it to practice physical skills in their minds.
Wow. I never would have guessed that something as simple as remembering your dreams could have so many uses.
It just shows you how powerful the human mind really is,
Right.
and how much we still have to learn about our own consciousness.
You know, this whole deep dive has really been an eye-opener. It's made me realize how important sleep really is, and how much more there is to it than I ever thought.
I couldn't agree more. Sleep isn't just something we do to recharge. It's absolutely vital for our physical and mental health. And while we may not understand everything about why we dream, it seems pretty clear that they're a big part of that whole restorative process.
So as we wrap things up here, do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners? Any tips on how to improve their sleep or maybe even tap into the power of dreaming?
The most important thing is to make sleep a priority. Make sure you have a regular sleep schedule and create a nice, relaxing routine before bed. And pay attention to your sleep environment. Keep it cool, dark, and quiet. It can make a world of difference.
What about remembering our dreams? Any advice on that?
Keep a dream journal by your bed and write down whatever you remember as soon as you wake up. Even if it's just little bits and pieces, you might start to see patterns over time.
I'm definitely going to try that. This whole conversation has been fascinating. It's amazing how much more there is to sleep and dreams than I ever realized.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? We spend about a third of our lives asleep. And yet there's still so much mystery and wonder to it. It reminds us that even the most ordinary things in life can be full of surprises and new discoveries.
Well said. To all our listeners out there, pay attention to your sleep. Embrace those weird and wonderful dreams, and maybe even give lucid dreaming a try. You never know what you might find. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the sleeping mind.
Sweet dreams.